Hello, my name is Dan Holme. I'm an Office 365 MVP and the co-founder of IT Unity. And I'd like to help you understand what's going on the web today. And what's going on the web are web services. So it's important that you understand what are web services and why do they matter. And in this short video, I'm going to give you a business-focused answer to that question. This is not designed to be technically detailed, developer-focused. This is designed to help normal people, like you and me, understand web services. And to understand web services, we have to take a look back at the way applications used to be built. In the past, when a developer wanted to create a calendar application, they would create a completely self-contained solution for calendaring. They would create the user interface of a calendar, but also the database and the data model for storing the calendar's data, and the security model for ensuring that only I could get to my calendar, for example. That solution, that application, would be deployed onto my computer at work, and life was fine. I would come into the office, I'd use my calendar, I'd go home. But today's world is very different. I now need my calendar not just at my desk, but in the conference room. I need it at home. I need it on vacation. I need it when I'm traveling and completely disconnected from the office. And so having that data in all of those places and potentially across multiple devices makes this model one that is no longer sustainable. So today, developers create solutions in a very different way. They create solutions as apps and services. And again, I'm going to be conceptual in my use of these terms rather than technically detailed. But if you think about an example, you'll start to understand what apps and services are. In Office 365, which is Microsoft's cloud-based productivity suite, there is the opportunity to maintain your calendar. Microsoft has created that code. They have the data model, they have the security to ensure that only you can get to your calendar and people who you've given permissions to, and they've created a user experience, or an app, so I have the ability to interact with my calendar. And now that's up in the cloud, so I can get to that calendar whenever and wherever I need. And if I have apps on my devices, I can interact with that calendar across my devices as well. But more importantly, Microsoft hasn't stopped there. They've exposed the functionality of the calendar as a service. And the service gives me building blocks. For example, there's the capability to read my calendar, and there's the capability to write to my calendar. Now, this calendar service goes by a lot of different names. You'll hear developers talk about services and APIs, which are application programming interfaces, and endpoints, but you can simply think about them as building blocks. And the cool thing about these building blocks is they're like Legos. You can take them and you can build something new and different and better. For example, a developer can use these building blocks to extend the capabilities of Office 365, and they can create a new user interface, for example, for your calendar. And all they have to focus on is that user interface. Instead of worrying about the data model and the security model, they simply use the services, the building blocks. They read the data from your Office 365 calendar, and they write back to your Office 365 calendar. Now, what the app can actually do is, of course, constrained by security. If an app wants to access your calendar, you or your organization must grant that app or service permission to do so. And that is, in fact, exactly what Sunrise did. You may not have heard of Sunrise yet, but it was an extremely popular calendar application that was recently purchased by Microsoft. And what Sunrise set out to do was to create a better user experience with calendaring. So Sunrise created a user experience, but then instead of trying to store the data and worry about the security, they simply read the data from your Office 365 calendar and write data back to your Office 365 calendar. And they focus on the user experience, not just within a web browser, but across devices. And the Sunrise app on iOS and Android was one of the extremely popular applications. It was so popular, in fact, and so effective that Microsoft bought Sunrise and is now part of Microsoft. But Sunrise didn't stop just at user experiences. Sunrise wanted to solve a real business problem, which is we don't just have one calendar. We have personal calendars and private calendars and calendars of events in Facebook and all kinds of other calendars out there in our digital lives. And Sunrise wanted to be able to consolidate those calendars into a single experience. So, for example, they looked at a service like TripIt. TripIt is a travel organization service. It allows you to forward your receipts when you purchase an airline ticket, a train ticket, a hotel room, a rental car, and it consolidates all of those various transactions into an itinerary for your trip. And an itinerary, of course, is time-based. And so TripIt exposes your itinerary as a service, as a building block. And so Sunrise is able to read your itineraries from TripIt and incorporate it into the Sunrise user interface. And it does that across dozens of other calendar-like services on the internet. So Sunrise gives us a single view of multiple calendars, a single place to interact with them, and ensures that that experience is available not only on the web, but across devices. And Sunrise is able to add all that value without having to worry about where the data is stored or how that data is secured. It simply uses the existing services on the web as its building blocks. Pretty cool, huh? So let's use what we've talked about to summarize the answer to the question of what are web services and why do they matter. A web service is simply code deployed to the cloud. And when most people talk about web services, they're talking about services available on the internet, in the public cloud, so to speak. Services like Office 365, TripIt, Facebook, Trello, and others. But you can also talk about a private cloud, which is the servers in your data center. And if you create a custom service within your organization, it can be built the same way, exposing these building blocks or APIs or endpoints. And that becomes what's simply called a private cloud because it's private to your organization. So web services are simply code deployed to the cloud that expose their capabilities as services. And developers can then use those services to build new apps and services. And the reason that's helpful is because it's faster to build those new apps and services. We're not having to reinvent the wheel. It's also, therefore, lower cost. A developer can build applications faster and at lower cost. And it's much more efficient as well, because a developer can focus on adding value with their expertise, and they don't have to worry about trying to reinvent things like security and data models that someone else has already gone to the investment to create. Microsoft does security and does data management and cloud infrastructure extremely well. So they're leveraging the code, the infrastructure, and the expertise of an existing service. The only disadvantage of this model is that it certainly is more complex. Because the building blocks are separate and are often owned by completely separate organizations, it becomes more difficult to manage them and to troubleshoot them if something goes wrong. If the data in your Sunrise calendar isn't correct, for example, it becomes difficult to know, is it Sunrise that's causing the problem? Or is it TripIt? Or is it Office 365? So the new world of IT and the new world of development and the new world of technology is about using these building blocks, putting them together, and managing them. It definitely becomes more complex, but it also becomes more powerful, faster, and lower cost. I hope you've enjoyed this quick introduction to the new world of the web and web services. My name is Dan Holme. If you want to find more of my videos and writing, join me at itunity.com/danholme.